My point is that workers ought to be, all of us who work in an office, a factory, or a store, ought to be in the position of participating in the decisions governing that enterprise. And I do that not only because I believe in democracy. And let me say that if you do believe in democracy, it's always been a mystery to me why that democracy that you believe in doesn't apply to the place where you work. After all, 5 out of 7 days of every week, most of your adult life, you're at work. So if democracy is an important value, it ought to be at your job because that's where you are most of the time. And democracy at the job means the following. If you have to live with the decisions that are made in a job, what you're producing, what technology is being used, what the health conditions of your workplace are, what's done with the fruits of your labor, literally whether your factory or your office continues, since you have to live with those decisions, you ought to participate, the basic idea of democracy. So I like the idea of cooperative enterprises because it fulfills my value commitment to democracy, whereas a capitalist enterprise doesn't, because it keeps all the decision making in a tiny minority. We all who go to work have to live with their decisions, but we don't participate in them, not even to speak of the community that has to live with the decisions. But the second reason is I see concrete results coming from an enterprise that was run by the workers collectively, and let me give you a few examples. First, do most of us believe that if the workers themselves made a decision that they would close the enterprise and move it to China? I don't think so. I think that the whole running away of enterprises out of the United States was made possible because the decisions to close enterprises here and to open them in another part of the world where you could get away with paying workers much less was a decision that was very good for the folks who make the decisions, but not for the average workers there. So if we had decision making made by the workers in place, they wouldn't undo their own jobs and they wouldn't move, and that would make a very different economic system from the one we have today. Second example. Suppose a technology was being considered by the corporate heads who make the decision, the board of directors, and it was one that wasn't safe. It created too much noise, too much air pollution, despoiled the water, whatever. If it's a bottom line decision of the typical sort, the board of directors and the shareholders, seeing profit using that technology, might go ahead and use it because it's profitable and that's what they're called upon to do, make profits. If the workers collectively made the decision, knowing that they had to breathe that air, they had to hear that noise, they had to live with that water, and so did their spouses and their children and their neighbors, I bet you'd get a different decision because they would weigh the costs and benefits of that decision differently. And my third example, although I can give you many, Bill, if you want them, the third example. When it comes to deciding what to do with the profits, suppose instead the workers themselves made that decision democratically. How do we divide the profits? You think they would give a handful of top officials wild sums of money to buy $40 million apartments on Fifth Avenue while everybody else was having to borrow money to get their kids through school? I don't think so. I think the people collectively would distribute the wealth, more to some than others for all kinds of reasons, but they would do it in a much less unequal way than we have in a capitalist system. So I challenge all of those who are concerned with a more equal system, with less inequality, to come up with a better way of achieving it than having workers be in a position to make the decisions as to how we divide the profits, because that is the single most important determinant of the inequality of income in our society.
But how do you answer this viewer? In 1994, when United Airlines was on the brink of financial collapse, a deal was made creating the biggest employee-owned companies in the U.S. In 2002, the airline filed for bankruptcy.
My answer is the following, and it's very important. For workers to own something is one thing. For workers to become the directors of their own enterprise is something else. Worker ownership means, for example, and we have lots of examples, both in the United States and around the world, that the workers become, in a sense, shareholders. They are the technical owners. But if the workers who become owners, and I'm not against that, but if the workers who become owners don't change the way the enterprise is operated, it remains a capitalist enterprise. It still has a board of directors, a handful of people who make all the decisions. It's true that the workers may vote for who those people are, but they've left the structure of the enterprise in the old form, hierarchical, top down. That's what was done in United Airlines. I was involved in that. I actually know.
How so?
They called me in at a couple points to participate in some of the discussions. The International Associations of Machinists, which was the union that was part of that. So they left the old capitalist structure. They weren't willing to go beyond saying, we the workers become owners, but we leave the running of the enterprise, the directing of it, the day-to-day decisions in the old form made by the old experts. Part of a movement away from capitalism to a cooperative enterprise requires that the people of the United States stop believing that the folks at the top have some magical entitlement to give them that position.
I think most of them have. If journalism and the social science surveys are reporting what's actually going on out there.
Yeah, and I think that there has to be a change. I think most Americans have to recognize that the folks who run our enterprises, they had to learn how to do that. And we can all learn how to do that. It's the old argument, in a sense, that comes out of our history.